So as set up your intention, as usual, and then today's our teaching is not following the Lamrim, which is left over last time. So it's more discussion in general, or if you don't have a question, then I will lead with some kind of meditation on emptiness.
지난디 로선도에 가서 컨디션이 그런 용해랑 걔는 제였어요. 니들이 그런 이슈였어요. 근데 뒤톤이 뒤 다른 좀 잘한서 집어질려나. 담보 같은 롭션 좀 서줘놓으려 집어든데요나. 아니 같은 집어먹지 다 되고 좀 잠시하여 다 집어든데요나. 뒤에 집어던 거지. 근데 집어면은 맞도 쓰는 것도 돼. 그럼 뭐고 좀 있어.
I asked Lobsang to come and he accepted, but it's here too early morning in India, so he might slept. So therefore, if you have any question from last class or related with that today's topic, we can begin with it. No.
Kilang chuachi di kafa tanda nga zo kunzo demba di rangshi di nga zo mongba jila zina digiyo na kande na. Can we consider conventional truth as ignorant or ignorant? It's laden with ignorance.
그래서 다른데 구조 덴바스에 대 다지당 구조 덴바 코랑기 칼라르다 니수 코랑 시자와이나 구조 덴바스 덴사기 아니 강경으로 덴비찬이 덴바 군조 덴바스니 덴사기 군조들이 가르치셨으나 저는 송한다시 로추바 덴징기 뭐 덴장 털라 마주비찬이 군조 덴바스니 어떤데지기 군주 때문에 다시도 되는지 shaguori. 이제 군주 때문에 임발라요 지로 추바 몽바 진비 예바요 말변은 아랑도 다가리래. 단얘기 체매 샤베더니 최강가 군주 때문에 인스고로와 디인두산에 다 군주 때문에 인스에 군주 때문에다 군주 때문에 강경으로 줘비 군주 densa기 다시니 den스입니다 지요래. 두산에다 까말라게 된다. 군주 때문에 몽바세 나와 있는 디몽바디 된다. 군조 강경으로 땜바죠. 군조들아 아니 뭐봐 말이봐 댄싱인 거래서 이제 군조 땜바 뭐 인비천이까지 시험하이나 아니 탄입이 침에 강원시합이 최강가 아니 군조 땜바 인스 어딘데기 제바지 시험을 했어.
So the truth of conventional truth, there are two kind of explanations.
Oh, Muslim duty just came.
He came it.
Yeah. So so let him know that I'm here if he wants to go to the test.
Oh, okay. It's good for me then. Okay. Let me complete first the answer for Kamala, then Geshe can begin Georgian mission. Listening the Georgian mission. Okay. Kunzo, the Tibetans say, as translated as conventional, right? Kunzo, and truth is Demba. Kunzo literally meaning is what was self-grasping, Dinzin, and Demba is truth. The truth based on self-grasping. So that's that we call it. So, but every conventional truth is not necessary is ignorance or delusion. So there are so many the valid which is established by the things, so many phenomena which is established by the valid cognitions or valid valid cognition. Those are kunzup demba. It's conventional truth, but we cannot say those are ignorance or delusion. We cannot say those are just ignorance. So therefore, in generally, every phenomena are as a conventional truth. But why we call conventional and truth based on what? So then it's a truth based on Denzin, because all phenomena, even established by valid cognition, but still it refers with it refers with Denzin, means self-grasping. Therefore, it called Kutsub Demba, but not necessarily as ignorance. Okay, Losan, I'm passed to you. As Gisela wants to continue discussion or question answer.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, please, caution continues.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about, and I want to make sure if that I understood it correctly. If somebody has the wrong view about emptiness, then he distances himself from enlightenment, but he does not, he's not reborn in a hell realm. If somebody teaches the wrong view on emptiness, he also distances himself from enlightenment, but he does not, he's not reborn in a hell realm. The only time that somebody is reborn in a hell realm is when somebody teaches that our view is the wrong view. So I think that what they call here in the United States is a distinction without a difference, because if somebody teaches the wrong view, but he doesn't say anything about our view, but he teaches the wrong view, he distances himself from enlightenment, but he does not end in a hell realm. Only when he says, oh, our view is the wrong view. So I don't see, it's like a really weak difference. It's a weak kind of, it's a distinction without a difference. I don't understand why only when somebody says your view, our view is the wrong view, only then he ends up in the hell realm. But when he teaches the wrong view without saying anything about our view, then he does not end up in the hell realm. So that's what I call a distinction without a difference. So I don't understand what's the difference between those two.
Sure, thank you. Okay, now contact. Interest. The song, Kalsang Yama, in the direct link of the company, local tower, Chigina, and the neighbor doing near song, like Gego, your maris, that was some yena, but don't meet the local tower, some yena, don't local tower, some yena, no like Gego, your maris. And the Mishanda la par no don't to the local G Mishanda la G love sona Tisona, the center of Tisona, and the don't Injiminji no la Kego Yomaris and a young Musu Ume Dawadi la Gaba Gaggy. Then in on the Nyo la Gay is songs and a young Kevashida Tongim do like this one, Kevashida Tongim does, legends and a chick with our chick, Mishanda la pile up. Any Mishanda la pile up down Umabetawa, Gozu Kaba Gani, Kevashida Mindus, Kevar Unigari base, and Timmy Kipala Kevar Caris.
알레용 땡에 진짜디 돈이기 따와라 로바 슈나 아니 예선 동 말에 디 돈이기 따와 로바디 미신다 배너 로바디 가서 냐도 디 디시 예딘데 자주마 존스 로와 동부 디지 하고 하시로와 아니 인다 동반이라 최 사무드는 람바네 디는 최 두바들 람하서 냠바인 바리바 차고 가서 얘기 나라 아니 지 냐왕이 손을 두고리 쓴 몽부지 손에디 시진기 도디를 무지로 와다 뜸바 줍는데 콜로 바비가서 동반이기 되었음바디 아니 대나시 말했습니다. 지 수와이나 수수기 챌린저라 빼나 랑싱게 마주비 동이 된다 루시자신으로와 인다 랑싱게 마주비 동반이 되니 아니 군베 콜라디니 지 가스나 지 수수기 양타바 말했으니 아니 시진기 다 흉치미 흉다 공부 미튼비톤이다 뜻이 간다 엄마 단주비 다가서는 때라바비 동이디 동반이 양타바 말했습니다. 아니 마지 딜라 로바 치지로 송세디 디 양타바 마임바 다 가서는 돈이 마도와 장경이 손 들고 동물이 쓰고 말 동반이 딜라 고와 치지로 잡내려와 아니 지 소소기야 켈네 신라야 메와체나 아니 녀손라 동물이에서는 가서 우마린 지청 용편소와 어디 고물을 주기 숭시자신다 간다라 가서나지 로벨루도 샤비 라브리는 치료줄라 시베 탐에도 아니 반년 다와 잡이게 대나시 송회를 와 디인도자니 다 된적이 돈이 되니지 동반이게 따와 되니 양타바티 양타바 말에 스니 소소야 타지도 켈레로와 어디 셀라야는 좀 줘봐 지긴디 아니 그 소소기 다 가서나지 체달을 말했어 좋아 신무부 양타발 꾸왔다 말했어 꾸왔다비 체다디 꾸닐라네 아니 소소년 손을 둥그제스 어디 딜 나와레스 나베디 되시디 아소와 어디레마도 지기 소소 켈레나 냐와미도 셀라 람나 냐와동등에 디디시자메스 근데 저는 그런데 개밥 매왔어야지 개밥이 다라레스 이내 된다 디가서는 동반이도 양타바 말에 쓴 나와이나 동반이 뽕와 동반이라 꾸왔다 말했어 다 꾸뎁디기로와 어디 꾸뎁당 로타디기 아니 소송에 손을 치비더니 균디니 사고레스 어떤 산 티찬닝에 손을 둥그리에서 송아레마도 지기 아니 돈이 마도와당 아니 또 알아서 돈이 캐말리 받zam기 내손 둥그리에서 송을 말해스 어떻게 캐바지 도와지스 어떻게 올라가
Yeah, so the explanation here is coming because it's really sourced right in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, where they talk about the view of emptiness and empty of existing things existing by way of nature, by way of inherent existence. And then it's that when people, so just merely being engaged in a wrong view or having, yourself, thinking in terms of the wrong view, right? It won't necessarily lead to a lower realm or a hell realm. But then when you actually are then going on and giving the wrong conception of emptiness to other people, and then you're basing your explanation and you're saying that the actual correct view of emptiness is a wrong view, and that when you do that, that's called deprecation of the view of emptiness. So this is where you're deprecating emptiness. You kind of fully accept this view with 100%, and then you go on to explain it to others. That's deprecating the Dharma. That's which is an act, is an action. That's an action that creates birth in the lower realms, hell realms. So that was that's the way it's explained in this. This came was again from the quotes, like in the Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, and then also Chandrakirti. They all, had quotes where they explained this is kind of what happens. You do this kind of deprecation of the Dharma.
그런데 그래서 동반이를 lokba 스나저와 다 랑신기 마주바디 다 가진 병아라 발라 가봐자서 랑신 마주바 윤센도 전에 최담지 여바 많이 계는 바로와 최담지 다 랑신 마주바디게 아니 가리 동반이 되게 따와디라 lokba 슈당데 랑싱의 마주바디 윤진도 전에 다 최담지 여바 마인스 랑싱 여바 마인스에 여바 마인스라도 최담지 메바다와기 메다지 로다디 비고레스 아니 로다디게 온게 아니 예송나 조에게 규사고레스 보다 디 온도진이 송아레스 디 가진 롭진디나 데도와 시진방배 최봉의 연조 조라 랑싱 메발라 면나양 랑싱 면나 지시 님도 최담지 때네 여바 마이바 되나 최대 양도 동과 유로스 어디 다 가진 디 가줄롭진 다 가진 조사 다가라마 어디 디 카세우션 디 로당스와 디나라 동반이라 로바 슈당디 송도와 어디 가진 강코랑도와 도나 랑심미비 동니 담바 마이노시 마신 공나 시지방비 추봉의 연조 조라스 다 간지스 연조 조그랬으나 랑심메발라 묘네 랑심메나 지시유 님도 최담지 때네 여바 마이바 되나 아니 최대 양도 동과 유로스 어디 로당디 디나라 베카세우 시우송다 어디 딜라서모 당스와 최담지 다 랑싱 여바 마인 세디 여바 마인 바지라 코니 아니 최담지 여바 마인 바수 여바 마인 바수도 다 등서 레준제 당한테니 기딜라서바 빵랑 최담지 여바 마인 바수는데 아니 팀에 봤다 외더니 록다 디오한게 아니 년조 조그레스 어디 디스는 마송으로 뭐지 돈이디 우마비 따와디 야부 말이라 아니 신다 따와 야부를 틴데게 제시 자와지고 말했어 동반이라 로바슈니 연조 조스 조당데 어디 틴데지 돈 제시 자고레스 어디 랍당.
And so it's not just that we're saying because you're talking about emptiness in this way and that you're deprecating the teaching, it's not that itself that's creating the cause for rebirth in the lower realm, but it's because in the context of refuting these earlier generations of Tibetans with the view that, oh, if phenomena are empty of a nature, they must be non-existent. They must just, all phenomena must be completely non-existent. Then they believe that, and so then they say that phenomena are just non-existent, and that leads then to having a view that, that there's not cause and effect in karma, so that they accumulate negative actions based on that, and then that through that path they will end up getting born in a lower realm. So this is again talked about in the last week's section that was gone over. And so it says, like in brief, if you claim that the emptiness, which is the absence of intrinsic existence, is not the sublime emptiness taught by the Buddha, and you refute it, then you will be reborn in a miserable realm due to having abandoned the true teaching, the perfection of wisdom. Then there's, I think that was the quote. And then it's also says, and that on the other hand, similar. Right? On the other hand, suppose that you do not deny all phenomena, but then say, we have seen these things, how could they be empty? Therefore, an absence of intrinsic existence is not what emptiness means. In that case, you have definitely abandoned emptiness. After you have abandoned emptiness in this way, you'll definitely be reborn in a miserable realm due to this action of depriving yourself of the true teaching. And then the quote from the Garjuna, Precious Garland. Yes.
Janet?
Okay, thank you. So when we think about the emptiness of self and emptiness of phenomena, that applies also in the hell realms, correct? And if so, well, actually, I'll say that. If that's correct, then I have a second part of the question.
What do you mean by it applies in hell realms?
So the hell realms really are, nothing's inherently existing in the hell realm either, right?
This the nyawa yang ji ganzagi tombo ganzag dame dan chigi dame nyawa karang la jago ras nyawa karang ranjigi tombare ras tambo jo tambo de nyawa kam
다 냐와라 수페레 다 냐와라 수바 최 탐제 랑싱 주비 동화로와 라고니 마주바 고 된소 강가 땡지 떼주 보고 중원상 라고니 주비 동화레스 고 유행 땡지 떼주 온게 냐위 동화 이 용어 차와로와 와 어디 인도산이 된제 인상 랑문이 마주바래 랑문이 마주한서 랑신도 동아래서 어디네 지금 시작.
So yes, the hell realms and like all phenomena they're also empty of being established within nature because they're also contingent and related. So they're things which arise because of causes and conditions, and they're dependent on causes and conditions and related, contingently related with them. So because of the being dependent arisings, they're also empty.
So we've heard the stories of how the Buddha had gone into the hell realms and had compassion. Bodhicitta had arisen, and so he was immediately no longer in the hell realms. Is that true also if someone perhaps has seeds of having been exposed to emptiness, perhaps at some point in one of their lives? Could they, if they have that awareness of emptiness, then are they immediately free from the hell realm? Because is it like well, never mind, we'll leave it at that.
Today, Pena Sangit Chumdinde, Dachaki Tumba Sangit Chumdinde, Nyawe Kamla, Chung Dugala, or the non-target Lola, Tection Kunzo Samgate, Nyawe Kam, then started gave out his. They gave a dung Dematatu Nyawale Putzari, Nyawale Dore. Chesang Nazo Nyawe Kamla, gave a jet, and the young Nyawe Kalsang de Karang gave a Ngama Tony like go at this Nepe Pashachi, so to Shevik in a shot. Nyawe come with them to Chiktombani Gitawa this, some course on Tony Gitawa Yonda, but some corner, and he Katu Dematatu Nyawale Toribis.
알레 다디 가스나 개왕님말다 동반이 기타와지라 고아 중세 유비 때문에 냐와라 개개 강사디 담하게 양 개왕님이 파제디 세네 동반이 기타와 전에 어다 딘데기 따와 전비 돕기 아니 다 뒤조 강가라랑 신 님부 중세 전민도 따위 딘데기 군이라니 아니 시에나 제스나 소바 딘데기 송제리엔데 아니 되게 대마도 세편에야 개와 야갈레 규미바 지기레스 고 개베세 따바라와스 어디 용거레스
Yeah, so if there's this situation of someone who did have a little bit of understanding of emptiness in a previous lifetime and then was born in the hell realm, but because of that power of that imprint arising, that tendency or imprint now awakening, you can say, in the hell realm, then they start to think, oh, yes, all phenomena are empty, and that leads them to have give rise to other qualities like love and compassion. Then yes, and then wouldn't that free them from the hell realm immediately? And yeah, that's the kind of situation that can happen. Yeah.
So then when we hear about certain actions, the result would be eons in the hell realms or thousands of lifetimes in the hell realms. That actually can be changed based on, that's not necessarily hard and firm. In other words, there's that quality of emptiness then even to that.
So then Lake Miguel Lake Sabalatene Nyawe Kamla Gajan Tongtra the Gabat Tongtra Greenwood Nyawe Kamla Gawalan Buddhis Nyawe Kam de Buddhis. Then that's also some Tombojana Nichen Yomaras Gepachen Yomaras Ganso Young Chichina Nyawe Kam that's all the Toy Tapshi Yoras.
어디래 답변은 세디라 개비 바지 망부지 싸와이나 어다 표현이 내려서 답변은 원수수 세 표이 되나 아니 막이 녀송된데 냐와이다 되노 가왔기는 야 된적이 남이 바지하고 원기 그냥 되게 개발 중마들 남상 된로라야 줘야다 냐위 동안도야 중중 용해 된적이 한 펜토 같은 송여레스 뉴산이다 가스나 말아주 개와 먹고 싸세야 되다 소소 삼로디 땡도 아니 가스나지 칼로레다 지 미기비 초디 강뉴뉴 기비 초디 강 뭐뭐 디디도 다 참주고 있습니다. 돈이기 따와도 졸라 금지 땡 거라서 균선이 되레스 누산에 소소 막에 네 네바지라 깨나야 그냥 박자세네야 야네 상과 야 세표기 tindig wa jaksa yore es o the teach lu da maran so gewa drup su kunsen tindig.
So in this life, for instance, in this lifetime, we can create a lot of strong imprints that we accumulate many strong imprints, for instance, of virtue through our practice, and especially things like bodhicitta and these other virtues. Then yes, then there's going to be the case, then it's going to allow us to, even if we do get born in the lower realm, to very quickly be freed from it and born in a higher realm again, in a happy realm again, or just have a much reduced suffering in the lower realm. So that's the whole point, really, of why we make such a strong emphasis on just accumulating as much virtue as possible, no matter what, accumulating as much virtue as possible, and then creating as little non-virtue as possible, because overall the force of the virtues will then outweigh the non-virtues. So overall, and then that will make it so that even when we get born in a place that's caused by a non-virtue, and so it's a unfortunate or unhappy realm, then it will be less, it will be shorter, it will be less suffering, we'll be able to be freed from it, that leave from that realm very quickly because of the overweighting power of the virtues. So that's why it's such a strong emphasis on bodhicitta and these other practices that create strong virtue.
Thank you so much.
Can a person's ability to study the Dharma and to create virtue, is that interrupted in a lower realm? Forget about what happened before the person ended up in the lower realm. Once the individual is in the lower realm, can he continue studying the Dharma and he can continue creating virtues once he's in the lower realm?
No, thank you. 그래서 미개와 갑수 미개와 렘베토라 농제 장와당 치 냠는제에 대해서 이제 세분의 녀의 감라 계획중나 이 춘냠는제라 파체 계획에서 이만한 년성 라양 아니 치 냠는제 투그레 치 농종제 투그레에서 넘쳐
원래 어디 예송이 때라다 미콤비 내려와고 가서는 냐위 랭게가 온도 송 내려와 답에 냐와 이날 섬로당 퇴게 다틴데 고갑배 님을 까만나시 뉴뉴로 돼 시다점로 된서와 된다 바자 세세 들어왔다 다나시 전에 이달라게나 다래 튼줄라게나 다래 간다를 기회 바자 깨왕마들라 기회 바자 또 친구 좀 마셔는 기회가 바자대 미트에데 칼가 버레스 냐위 되나와 냐위때는 고민 냠리시세의 대외자요 말해서 권냐와 나게 서비스라 레도 고란 동행기 원도 손에 딘제게 냠년 치롱 거랑 미콤비네스도 다 미콤비네 나라로 깨도 미콤바스도 다 기비치 두발 미콤바 차대 다 응기 박자기 원기 다 니세바다 오신 중세기 한국 전반인데 용시 와라 딘제게 또 기더니 용해들 깨왕만 했더니 배지 말아서 다 기비 또 친구들이 바자 샤마토와 있는 어떤 딘데지 딘디 갈라카보레스 이나야다 냐냐비 때라더니 말아서 람냠네 제게 공자에 딘데 고업자와 있는 요 말에스디 디타주 가서는 고 라완메 바다가도 배동에 슈타 미게발레 또진 사비 또기 또 드닝에 손나라 끼와 냐와나라 끼와리 냐와나노 냐비 드네 배 소소게 동에 배 까마르니 배 세다메 용고에게 딘데나 레온디 다 tindige 탑시디 쌉도 두배 요 말에스 티딩도 당내막이 바자샤이나 바자디기 다야 규민에 아니 니세바다 오신 tindige 테네네 티기야 개와 규민에 아니 개와 중말라 개와 상부래 tindige 탑시지 요레스 모두지 코로나를 림나 냠네 셰갈 카부 디 어떤데 저시 저샤스 말아 섬주더와 lamrim nala di lamrim gola tarang di nashi kor sunero.
So the hell realm is a state which lacks leisure. It's one of the states which lacks leisure, and that's there's a note. One of the things that we have to be free from for a precious human life, right? The 8 leisures and 10 endowments. So it's a state that lacks leisure. So there's actually no opportunity there to do Dharma practice, do meditation or study or practice. And what is possible is, what we say is possible is that by the power of a very strong imprint that was created in a previous life, you could awaken. And by the power of a previous imprint awakening, it can lead to some temporary, very short window for a little bit of a virtuous thought. But in terms of really practicing or studying Dharma, there's the suffering is just too great. It's too heavy. So there's really every single minute, there's just immense suffering in the hell realm. And then even the animal realms, the hungry ghost realms are also realms that lack leisure, because they lack really the word here is they lack the time and opportunity. There's no free time, you can say, no free time in those realms, because you're just experiencing suffering every minute. And so there's no way to really go into a real virtuous direction like we can in the human realm. And this is what was talked about in the first section of the Lamrim Chenmo, the great treatise. The first section, meaning the section for beings shared in common for beings of lesser capacity, and that's in the discussion of the precious human life, and that was stated there, of the faults of the hell realms. So yeah, because when we are in those lower realms, we're just really just completely under the control of this suffering, and we have no freedom, just completely under the power of this suffering. Not under the power, but the suffering has too much power, and we have no freedom from it.
So no one can ever get enlightened in a lower realm, even if he doesn't have, even if there is a split of a second, a split of the infinite smallest amount of time. Can somebody become enlightened in a lower realm and then be free?
Then Nyesongi Tenla, so Sangi, John Kalsang, Tarbatobia Don, Sangi go on Tobia, you're a bit. Nyesongi Ten.
순순 나라 깨자비지라 다 산제 공부한 토베도 이제 파션이 람삽도 깨기 고거랑 답에 갈라카부리스 고고스는 다 이제 좀 된데 배는 막이 정주쌤 예손들라는 졸라미 닝지 깨네 아니 세저로 다 대저오기 다 주모도 지기 야 산제 공부한 토베 파션이 배 팔람 토베기 된적이 되니 아니 배 파빌람 토베기 대외장 다 람삽도 토베 갈라카부리스 이용해 말이스 가서는 그 미콤비니스 납도 주택배 개와 쳐버진 주변에 답배 때 미콤비니 그런 류된 거라 된데 차대르스 누전에 당아주 개와 개위 촉바와라더니 류된 상부 톱고레스 다미 류된데 톱고레스 미류된 톱아이나 아니 디본지도 제 개와 주변 때 남고메기 때 쳐버진 차기레스 류전 디레스.
So without even thinking about enlightenment, liberation, or Buddhahood, even just newly generating a path, spiritual path in the lower realms is really pretty much impossible. So this is why, again, they're called the states which lack leisure, the states which lack free time. And it's just that the body itself, right, the actual basis, which is the body, the physical basis, you could say, of those beings is itself what we say what we mean when we say the state which lacks the free time. It's the body itself. So that's why it's so important to acquire an excellent physical basis, or excellent word. So an excellent physical basis is why that's why we have to acquire that excellent physical basis. Excellent meaning like, yeah. In this context, it means having the ability to do virtue and has those conditions to do virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, what I had in mind was a spontaneous enlightenment. I understand there is no leisure and there's no opportunity. What I meant was if there is any way that somebody can experience spontaneous enlightenment without needing the time and without needing the way and the et cetera, but like a spontaneous enlightenment.
Then Loborgi Tarbatobia, the don't see what it is. Yamlen Bajene.
다디 로블기 타버톱스에 대 용어 거래 요 말이서 가서는 타버토발라 제칭의 뉴몬지로와 뉴몬 투숨디 뽕거리스 매와 마소바도 소소주기 뉴몬 투숨 벤투서 매와 마소바도 타버토야고래 요 말이서 다 뉴몬게 자와 당선레스 다 당선게 니보티 돈유도 불로디고 뭐레스 돈유도 불로디게 당선게 로 추바레샤 삼미 당선게 되니 조메게 니보 당하나 좀 아니 가스나 메시게 추 나신게 다 당진게 님보다우디 당메도 비셔랍디레스 다 당메도 비셔랍디 아니 곰발라테니 루브르 용에 거라 요 말이지 벤놈다 타입이고는 삼노 땅니 퇴바치 삼바지 곰바 냠내신 퇴숨 검수 리바신도 마조와 루브 톱자게 되는 용에 답에 그 용에 거라 요 말이지 그래 규정과라 삼노 땅이 그 퇴숨 검수 리바신도 준이 조고 해지라면도 루브 톱자게 되는 게 다 용에 당 아니 딘데칼라 카브레스 어디 타주네 셰투르디 용마레스.
So there's really no possibility for any kind of spontaneous enlightenment. It just doesn't work that way. So to achieve, to be liberated from samsara, achieve liberation from samsara, we need to eliminate the afflictions and the three poisons. Afflictions which are summarized as the three poisons. And the root of those three poisons and all afflictions is the self-grasping, the ignorance which grasps the self. And so in order to counteract that we need to realize emptiness. And part of realizing emptiness, or a precondition for realizing emptiness, is understanding that the self-grasping is itself a mistaken mind, right? It's a mistaken cognition, misperception. And so to realize that, and we can't just do this, it's not just a quick and easy thing, but we have to approach it through a wide variety of reasons, a wide variety of styles of reasoning. Say more than just wide variety, but the word is literally a limitless kind of number of different styles of reasoning. And so that requires us to really, so the reason here is really just the steps needed to achieve the liberation and eliminate those afflictions. It's just that this process requires the process of study or listening, contemplation, and meditation. These three aspects of generating the wisdom of emptiness. And it doesn't just it can't just happen spontaneously. That just isn't how it works.
So in other words, we don't believe in miraculous enlightenment.
Miraculous means?
Miraculous means like a spark.
Without causes?
No, without the infinitesimal smallest amount of time that somebody, in that infinitesimal small amount of time, somebody realizes everything that needs to be realized for enlightenment, including emptiness, including everything, and the person becomes enlightened. That's what.
But without going through a process to get there.
Right, without going through anything. That moment, that's the moment that somebody has their realization necessary for enlightenment. That split of a moment that somebody realizes everything he needs to realize to be enlightened, and the person becomes enlightened. That's like miraculous enlightenment.
Oh, okay. That is that. Okay. Then Chezang 나도 the K-lemba 하나 아니 깨직 직점이 그래서 그래 깨직점이 지금 강사가루만 지금 넘치는 넘는 만치네 지금 법도가 제 동시에 또 배케베 예시디 나도 K-lemba랑 요마라스 근데 당신 근데 당신 트라프토비아 동장 요마라스
이때 영어가 막 이따가서는 산재 코넥이 다 깨직 뒤지거든 저 담제 또 왔어야지 디 용과르마도 지금 알아서 아니 이제 람기 똑바 주님 마제 미탐에 발티 용어 그래요 그랬어. 그때는 딘데 메디를 톱자고 야 탐제 지금 고만 톱스에다 산재 고마 톱스에 용어 그래요 그랬어. 끝까지 지네 룩소스 류가 이숨스기 싸비 지바도 마정 튕제 촌이 son으로 손음다 이식이 초산이 되게 나네드는 돈이 비셔라 디당한테는 창조 셈니 규민이든 답이시니야 도에 어디 맨날 용해 거라지 근데 용해 말했어 뒤 가정에 뭐도 물론 개와 뒤 기보 그 손음 이시 초조신 손음 이시 내 중에 담바군이 도와주었어 다 방금 뒤나 뒤대야랬어
So no, that is not something there's any way that could happen. There's no way that can happen because, I mean, the Buddhas, they do perceive all phenomena simultaneously, but not ordinary beings. And then the way to get to Buddhahood, then it has to go through first, start eliminating the things which are obstacles to enlightenment, obstacles to awakening, which then we have to reduce our afflictions and non-virtue, and then gradually accumulate these two collections, merit and wisdom. That is something that takes effort and time. And so after accumulating the collections of merit and wisdom, then we achieve the result, the two bodies of a Buddha. And that was, again, discussed when we went over that verse, which we make as a dedication verse from the Gaijina's Precious Garland also, but fortunately, I don't have the English stuck in my head that clearly, but it's basically by accumulating the two accumulating the two collections, I achieve the two bodies of a full awakening, something similar to that. So that was, we explained how the process works to achieve awakening. So we still have about 30 minutes, so we can actually go through the text.
Thank you.
대나 운중 다다 매제바 대나 제바 타와주를 시송바니스 ngobola rangi ngojubi rangshin debi ngomawala tajegi tawa themi sawa jubi thoi indes rangshin the thukundu mujuba denani tagdar julas thungamani yoba thuchima shiba denani cheda jubi chiru soda di azing 다든다 디 병아라 베트니 가스나 병아라 베타 동반이나 로바 주인이 집에 따와 둥그랬을 때 치다 둥그말에 아니 가스는 체다스 딩아마 유여바 체르니 치수 메바 체르네 바지라 시그레스 룽디 장로와 운중 다다 메제바 되나 제가 룽디 장로와 어디 다네 아니 디 장와디 다 디기 된다디 다디 말에선 제름지 지시대 점니로와 운중 다다 메트나 치바 따와 주르세 된다디 가스나 운중 시대 오보라 랑게 오주버 랑신 데비 응어마와라 당 응어마와 당 된다 디 운중 대다 매제와 되나 치바 타와 주르스 대다 자식이 지르와 엄마 자와셔라 지르와 오다 딜라 병아라비 지시디 로바지 자와라 가서는 응에마 유 된다 매바 체된 바지라 체다스기랭아 녀만 님에 된다 매바 두고인자 체다 둥 말이스니 그 렌자와들 룽디 쿵당인데 룽디 된다 디 말이스 디 응어마와 기르와 당 응어마와스 둥어랑 시주바 체랭게 체라마다 도대바로 같은데 디 값으로와 큰속이 되네 우보랑신 주바디 기진이우스 매바 되어들라 우보라랑게 우보랑신부터 우보라 우마와라 따지게 따와 되미사와 주비 되인데스다 우마와 된들라 다 쩌바쩌비 깝라 디게 되서는 응에마 유네 된다 매바디 따와들라 되네 체다슨 디시고 말레스 우마베 우보랑신 주바 켈레네 디기진이우스 매스 되바이나 디라트 딱다다 체다 니가라 흥구리에스 가스나 우보랑신 주바 켈레드 아니 가스나 우보 땡도 요고바 되고디로와 아니 가스나 딱다 로아디 랑신 뒤군도 여봐 되고 배더니 딱배 탈라 주그래 성우보 탐지 끼지기 지에 맞지 받더니 네고 받더나 딱배 탈라더니 로아 어디 랑신 주바 켈레인데 랑신 주바디 땡도 네고인데 딱배 탈라 흥그래 스타 로아 저도기 타디 디가 주시 다 된데 왜 랑신 주바 켈레 베테네 다 디기지 뉴스 메라와이나 다 딱 랑신 주바 랍디 아니 땡도 네바 되게 딱배 랑신지래 딱배 랑신지 아니 매바 되고나 기지 뉴스 매바 되고나 아니 여바지라 매바 따와 체다 주가래서 어디 뒤송가래서 어디 되게 마도지기 아니 응아를 유에 된다 매바 따와더라 체다래서 뒤송고 말해서 누자니 운중 다다 매제바 되나 체바 따와 주 공부를 주기 숨겨고 공바디 뭐마와당 아니 우마바기 빠르게 도주 있어야지도 아니 뭐랑 신주바 켈레비 때니 기진유도 매바 되고 와라 그래서 어디 디켈레 받으라 딱다라 롱비捐당 체다라 롱비捐니가 요래 했으니 딱다라 롱단디 뭐랑 신주바 켈레도 뭐보디 미지바 땡도 내바 되고 완상 아니 조도기 탈라 알홍아 디시 다 고기진유도 매바 되스도 아니 땡도 내바 요고 왜지라 뭐랑 신주바 켈레도 뭐 딱바 임거지라 아니 기진유도 매라도 아니 땡도 네비 랑신디 매바 켈레바이나 체다가 주그래서 어디 디 고물루기 뭐뭐라더니 지 타와동의 교레마도 뒤에레마도 지기 아니 응아를 요와디 진담매바 되바들었던 체다 수고 되어 말해서 어디 지름지기디 대응하라비 공바 제와디 공바 노아래서 다 제시리 두순 송샤스
应该 Lamrim 기치 应该 로로나가 니마스
디 가진 것도 데 랩소와 대나 운중 다다 매제와 대나 체바 타와주르 시에 숭바니스 가진
I
것도
think it is on page 149. The last paragraph. Therefore, when Nagarjuna fed.
네 보이기
Oh. Are you reading the text? Or on
yeah the
textbook?
it's the textbook it's just the book okay so anyway I found so the English so calm, if we claim that there were real things and then later viewed them as non-existent, then we would have a view of annihilation. However, we do not accept their existence from the outset. What is annihilated? So as to make this a view of annihilation, for Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise says, if you say that what arose before is now non-existent, that entails annihilation. Thus Nagarjuna says that such is a view of annihilation. So what is actually being said here, just to review from previous classes, is we're again talking about how there's the earlier generation of Tibetans that they have a certain understanding of this verse where it's saying, okay, so then the next part, thus Nagarjuna says that such is a view of annihilation. So they're the way that they're so actually I should read the reply. This is not reasonable. Your supposition is that in order to have a view of annihilation, one must assert the earlier existence of whatever thing is annihilated later. Okay, so anyway, there's a lot, not sure exactly which part of it was read, but it's they have this explanation where they're saying, okay, what existed before is now non-existent, and that would become a view of annihilation. So that's not the correct way to explain it, though. This verse by Nagarjuna here is the way to explain it is talking about how we have people who accept that phenomena are existing, they're, you know, that things exist by way of a nature, that then they're called the essentialists. So there's essential entities that exist within nature. Those are called the essentialists. And so And these essentialists, they first accept that there's, it's not just saying that, okay, something existed in the past and now in the present it's no longer existent. But they're saying that because they have this view that something exists with an essential nature, right? It exists as an essential entity and with a nature. So because of that view, then whatever those phenomena are that exist that way, they have to have a kind of permanence where they abide continuously without changing, that they abide in a stable way. So that's already the view of permanence. That's already the extreme of permanence. So they've already fallen to the extreme of permanence. Within that view, though, of the extreme of permanence, that things do exist with an essential nature, essential entities exist with a nature. Then they say, but they change, and in the second moment, something that existed goes out of existence. It's not just something, but it's something that has an essential entity in this way. Then going out of existence means that something which should have been, according to their view, it should be stable over time without changing, now doesn't exist. So now that's what makes it the view of annihilation. And so actually, because what they're looking, the view is doing, that view is that something which exists, they're viewing something that exists as non-existent. And that's, again, according to their own already, the extreme of permanence. Within that view, they then assert things going out of existence now is an extreme of annihilation. So it's actually what is described of this view is that it's both extremes at once. It's the extreme of permanence and the extreme of annihilation, because they have the extreme of permanence that essential entities exist within nature that then go out of existence. So they're viewing the thing that they think exists as non-existent, and so that's both the extreme of permanence and the extreme of annihilation. That's one.
Oh yeah. Tadi order teach richwa tu ngamar yubi rangshin tu chimar shigba zimbi chedawa meba demba nas ngobo namla rangi ngo dubi rangshin tu zami ke milenbi gunzun du jowa ingi cheda tamje te pongwa minu sta de karsungosna ani tinde songzangwa ani tinda di da ngobo rangshin dubi tu kichi niwa meba daging dawaina dada cheda nigara rungu yezangs 아니 와 틴데 왜더니 아니 우보랑 신주바 되니 기진이위도서 다 매봤다비 와 틴데 우보랑 신주바 기진이위도서 매봤다비 체다디 랑루라 요 말레스 매바디 되는데 다랑 루기로 와다 우마베드는 우보는 랑게 우주바 당시 뒤에서 케미는 비군젠들라 오다 뒤쪽으로 스타든다 베나 우보랑 신주비 뒤기진이와 매바디 우마비 체링거 말와 우보다 디 켈링고 말데 우보 기진가마디 기진 이유도서 매바디 켈링이로 와 베나 쇼게기 튀기 우보디 공 치료 매와다 계사기 튀기 우보디 드링도스 매고 우보스니 기지기 자와 가바지로 와오 틴두선이 틴데베랑시 대삼다 켈링고데 있는 랑싱 주비 우보디 랑 기진 이유도서 아니 매바디 켈링이 매와디 우보 랑싱 주바 뒤섬에 매서 오당으로 와 우보라 랑싱 주바 랑원의 주비 취 간디지네 베드니지 켈링이 말해서 어디 수 켈링스나 랑루 우마비 켈링이 군전도 프로그램마도 지기 아니 체다 담제 수도가 랑가를 여바 치메스 매봤다와 다 간들 체다기 내주 강가 딘데 베드니 우어랑시 마주와 켈링이 군전을 두 말해서 병아래비 디군전을 장와라 아니 나마야 미 딘다에 바 미디어 인두자니 랑시 마주바 세게 디니가스나 체다 가리레다 풍의 교매 가스나 얘기 드니 우보랑 심어주바 되고래 티 가스나 나리 매바 틴다야 매바 되었으니까 신인데 아니 체다기 아니 강가 우보랑 신주바 가에게 유저를 두고 말해스 어디 신인데서니 우보랑 신주비 뒤기진이와 매바 디르와 어디 되게 우보랑 신주바 뒤즈면 케밀림비 균세를 두그레스 어다 디체인데 다 준다 디카송스는 가자 캡체와 두겐디기 그러와 아니 최담제 오늘 랑싱의 마주와 균센도 체네 아니 최담제 여바 마인스 체다죠 여러와 오다 딘데 왜 체다 따주디기 응오랑시 마주 균세를 두고 말해 소다 그러와 오다 두신데 디세가데 지름지다 가자 캡체와 두어들 송샤스
내가 쇼당 가와이 쇼당 가와이
쇼다는 계좌 주시들도 와
내가 로가리
가진 아주 지혜죠 봐 가진 지혜를 전하고서 가진 잠시야디
시게바 잡아 레이크 온디 올라라 디페돌라라
시제비 제가
쉐양 시게바 잡아 레스티 올라라
시제비 제와디 디홀라리
대다리 예메바 당ран시 메바 당 안딩가 워투가 그래서 레마서
시제비 제와스디 가서 조사하면서 조사를
저처럼
식사기 룽숨리기도 와 우마치 룽숨리기도 룽숨기 당보들라 디 강들라 렌제 메바 뒤베 체다와다 미자비 균센사 식사리 제바 숭데스 세지도 디 강들라 디니에서 식사
So reply, this is not reasonable. Your supposition is that in order to have a view of annihilation, one must assert the earlier existence of whatever thing is annihilated later. In that case, it would absurdly follow that even the Lokayata proponents of materialism would not have a view of annihilation, for it is not their claim that past and future lives, karma and its effects, etc., once existed and later became non-existent. They do not accept such as having existed in the first place. Therefore, when Nagarjuna said, if you say that what arose before is now non-existent, that entails annihilation, he meant that proponents of existence who assert that things have an essential or intrinsic nature will unquestionably have views of permanence or annihilation, or if they claim that this intrinsic nature never changes, then they will have a view of permanence. If they claim that it once existed and was later destroyed, then they will have a view of annihilation. But Yamakas do not accept the existence of even a particle, essential or intrinsic nature. This fact proves that they lack one type of view of annihilation, the type in which it is held that an intrinsic nature that once existed is later destroyed. It does not prove that they have eliminated all views of annihilation. So this is where we're still kind of refuting the wrong interpretation of this quote by Nagarjuna and showing how to interpret it. So so this is the view where you have essential entities that exist intrinsically, and then they go into their exist, and then in a second moment they stop existing. They become non-existent. That's a view of annihilation, and it's within a view of this view of essential entities that exist intrinsically, that exist with natures. In general, though, we do accept that things, impermanent things, that they, in the morning, something, an impermanent thing that existed in the morning isn't there anymore in the afternoon. So an impermanent thing in the first moment does go out of existence in the second moment. That's just general impermanent things, or just things. But this is a view where you first have the view of phenomena existing established within nature. Then if they go out of existence, that's where it becomes the view of annihilation. So for the Madhyamikas, it doesn't fall into this view of annihilation, because the Madhyamikas never assert that there's essential entities that are established within nature from the beginning. And so there's no phenomenon, since they don't assert there's any phenomenon like that, then their view that phenomena go out of existence in the second moment it's just a regular process of impermanent phenomena, going from one moment to the next. That isn't a view of annihilation. There's no fall of that falling into a view of the extreme of annihilation. And this is, again, we're in this wider section where we're showing this view of the overly broad identification of the object to be negated, which is of these earlier Tibetans earlier generations of Tibetans, which, so they're saying that all phenomena don't exist. And that's, part of their misinterpretation of this quote from Nagarjuna. I think in this one, they take double the Dorna Range maybe Dongba ni Damba Maya, the Ola Ra, Yode Coach, it goes at it.
Kalsang Daniela, are you using the JCLR Tibetan Gangchub Lamrim Volume 1 by any chance? The PDF?
Probably.
Because if you are, it's page 628 of the PDF, or at the bottom.
No, it wouldn't be that. Sorry, it's because it's somewhere around here, because I know this is where in the last classes. Dida Gunjung Dada me chebat. They're not chebat Hawa gears. Okay, that yes. Did it.
It's in your that thing. Tena, which of Chibatawa to share soon be a knee said in Mar.
Dena. Got only with Dena, a language Dada Meche, It's hard because there's no, the Tibetan has very, very few paragraph. Some texts have none whatsoever, but this has at least a couple, but no indentations for new paragraphs. So it's like just start reading in the middle of a huge block of text. So okay, I found it. Let's look at my Kona.
This way.
Oh, this.
What that in the Dicador, the Chidang Jodo Dang Gudip says your Jodogi Tadang Gudip Tahana, Tata Chedase near what in that the Unishina Jodogi Tata said Jim Mewajila Yuba Tawa de la Jodoche, Kugi, Zegi Udela Jodogi Tas, Nawa, and Penacare, Pena Pumbarochi. Taba Marte in a Taba Zimba in a Jodo Chavar. Tapumba T Zegi, you Pumba Tapati, Jodogi Tachavar, Tata Chavar. And Tanashi Pumbadi, Tanya to Pumbadi Yorde in a Chidang Shejara Pumba Yomar, Zimba in a Zingelo de la Gudebla. That did Zegi Udila, Gudebi Tas, Chedasen. What the Tin Dawa nonsense in the Kapdi, Mubo Rangshin Druba. Tuikiji nibi to Meba Zimbadela, Jodogi Tadang, Anit Kudebi Taniga Guni the Yores, the Kelema, Kilendan the country is Lavaina, that did days Jirwa, Samutan days cover of Casana, Mubo Ranshin Drubi, Tuikiji Niva Meba Zimba, Slayende, Kugi Mubo Ranshin Druba, Mubo di Ranshin Druba Zio Marte, Inayang. Ko ngobo rangshin juba tuikiji niwa meba zingen lo diri jela ngobo rangshin juba di keling be tengne ani ko meba zimba ase jedu ta dodogi tendewe ngobo rangshin juba tui niwa meba zingen lo di ani gyula dinge kansa di dodogi tala ruwa kudogi ruwa oni kudogi tala ruwa tajegi taniga ruwa chage chaye yunzen di ani ngobo rangshin juba keling be tengne dodogi tala ruwa ani ko Ngô Rangshin Juba Tuniba Meba Sidi, Ani Tabi Rangshin Yimbajila, Ani Meba Tayundi, Ani Chibitala Runga, so that tea, Rodogi Tadang, Kudubi Tanigala Rungu Gundi Dilla Yores, what the Yodandi that Geshe the Utindiz on it. That D Kawani Chorsana, Mumawatan, 우마바니 좁아 쯧들 왔다 고물루기 우마발라 저랑 우버랑신 좁아 그기니유도 스메바 켈링고 와라 켈레와 있나 저도기 타당 꾸데기 타 니가를 흥구도 흥어 주그레스 어디 균 땅땅디 삼로 땅 있나 저도 올라디 지당 람상 좀 저도기 탈을 흥디고 저도 디 가스나 우버랑신 좁아 켈레바지 우버랑신 좁아 짐바지기 땡네 셰고디 우버랑신 좁아 뒤기지니바 메바 짐 로코랑 안 저도 있으나 지금마소와 이네 우버랑신 좁아 뒤기지니비도 스메바 징에 로디기 줄라 대연데 우버랑신 좁아야 켈레 땡도 유비 우버지 메바야 켈레고와 차원상 아니 따지기 타니가를 흥이 껴인데 예스 껴요 단디 어딘데지 돈에드니 대시 잡은데 아니 문중 다다 매제바 되나 제바 타와 주고서 어디 뒤 타와 땅땅디 어딘데지 돈 대시 자야 되는 예와 체도와 지금도
Okay, so this is, I didn't read more the text. So just to explain it again, this is a subtle point here, and we're talking again about these two kinds of wrong views. There's the over exaggerations, and then there's deprecations. Two kinds of wrong views. So over exaggerations, or the extreme of an over exaggeration is also the extreme of permanence, and the extreme of deprecation is the extreme of annihilation. Two ways of saying the same thing. And so generally, when you talk about a view of exaggeration, we're talking about apprehending something that doesn't exist as existing. So this would be something like apprehending something like a pot, apprehending it as permanent, or grasping it as permanent, thinking of it as permanent. That would be a case of an extreme of exaggeration. And that's also, so that's an extreme of exaggeration, and it's also an extreme of permanence. And then so just the view that phenomena, that permanent phenomena just don't exist at all within amongst knowable objects, then that's a view of annihilation, extreme of annihilation, and an extreme of deprecation. So that's just examples to clarify what these are. And so now we have a case where we're talking about something which it has the faults of the two extremes of permanence and annihilation. So how does that happen? Because what we have here is the view that these things exist within nature, that essential things exist intrinsically. And so that is already now a view of permanence, right? The extreme of permanence. And so when you have that view, within a belief like that, then you accept that something can go out of existence in its second moment. A thing that's existing with the nature intrinsically goes out of existence in a second moment. So that mental cognition itself that grasps this thing going out of existence in the second moment, that very cognition is not an extreme of permanence. It's not this exaggeration. That's it's not an exaggeration itself, but it has the fault of the extreme of falling into the extreme of exaggeration. I'm sorry, a fault of falling into the extreme of permanence, because you've already accepted that the phenomena are existent within nature. So that's, you're in that view already, which is the extreme of permanence. Then within that, where things should now be stable, existing without change, because that's what it means to exist within as an essential entity by way of a nature, then you say it goes out of existence in its second moment. Now you have something which you have on top of the extreme of permanence. Now it becomes the extreme of annihilation, or the extreme of deprecation. And that's because something that in your view should be now, because I should say, because of your view, the consequence would be that it would be permanently unchanging. Now you say it changes and goes out of existence. So that is now a deprecation of the consequence of your own view. That's why this particular quote here is something that it is showing both the extremes of annihilation and permanence. And why is it even being described? Again, it's in the context. And so again, the quote is, if you say that what arose before is now non-existent, that entails annihilation. But why is Nagarjuna even saying this? And from the fundamental treatise, it's because he's in this debate with the essentialists. So there's a debate, these debates between the essentialists and Nagarjuna, or the Madhyamaka school. And so he's pointing out these are the absurd consequences that come, this is one of the absurd consequences that comes from the views of the essentialists.
다디오들 렌데 메바드비 체다와다 민자비 추시니 식살이 개발 송데 디달 체다와니 렌데당 직된 8월 메바 되라 우메베니 대다랑 신기 메바 되베 담지 체발 유도스다 다딘다 디 가스나 렌데 메바 되게 답변을 내준데서 개왕가지로 소 메스니다 장변 바로 왔다 장변 비주다디나 개왕아마 개와 치마 메스 아니 루와 규개와 치바라 되네 아니 지부 대화 중화 규미기와 제바드는 지부 동화 중화스디 덴바 말했을 다 소소 개와들라 가리베 치투나 잽상을 개와 치마라 갖고지 다 통해요 말씀 동해 용어스디 요 말씀 어디 레준데라 꾸왔다고래 개와가지라 꾸왔다고와 어디 꾸왔다빙기 되게 개와가지 메세디 개와가지 정신메바 켈레도 다 우마베 개와 그래서 개와가지 정신메바 주가 켈린 거와 다 디니 자우도 섬에 다 도발 레고 뒤쪽바디다 우마 직산나라 반년 다와 잡아기 디니마다 룸다 숨즈 대용도 와다디 가스나 다 개왕가지다 레준데라 수바랑 신기 메 세와디 건조기 답변은 장뱀기 따와던 우마비 대시 자단 미자와 되겠으나 그 때문에도 되고 그래서 개왕가지다 렌젤라 수바테다 아니 가스나 탄예도 메바 되고 그래서 거와 우마베 랑신게 마주 랑문에 마주 이네 탄예도 유스 가스는 레준데 당 개왕가지라 수바 땡데 뚜루레도 왔어 그래서 땡데 뚜루 임비 준생기 아니 랑신게 마주비 준세 되셔고 건조기 아니 가스는 랑신게 마주 세대다 데렵고 탄예 때문에 와 개왕가마에 개와 치마에 메비 준세 같은 임미게 통마수 딘데 자우지다 안들 만들 탄예도 메바 딘데 지게 돈이 랑신 마주 세제시디 마도지기 우마비 랑신 마주비 제시디 나신 잡투에디 메자 우마베 랑신 마레 준데다 개왕가지라 랑신 마주바 되에당 장변바 딘조기 되니 개왕가지도 랑신 마주바 되에니 군생을 정 말이 충분 말이 어디 디니 뭐 우마 측색이 되니 개와 송우도 다 측색이 runde 디호라 장요래 되니 방진이
And then, so 150, the top of 150. In a different way, Madhyamikas are also unlike those who have the other type of view of annihilation, a view in which it is held that karma and its effects do not exist. This is set forth at length in Chandrakirti's clear words as follows. Madhyamikas and nihilists have different theses, since those who have a view of annihilation hold that karma and its effects, as well as other worlds beyond this lifetime, do not exist, while Madhyamikas hold that such things lack intrinsic existence. Madhyamikas propound that things such as karma and its effects lack intrinsic existence by reason of their being dependent arisings. Nihilists do not assert that karma and its effects are dependent arisings, so they do not use dependent arising as a reason to support their thesis. Instead, to support their claim that karma and its effects are non-existent, the reason they give is that the living beings who are here now were not seen arriving in this life from a former one, and are not seen leaving it for a future one. Hence, there is an enormous difference between nihilists and Madhyamikas in their reasons. And then the quote, Chandrakirti's clear words wasn't read yet, but that follows. And this is now we're talking about another type of view of annihilation. And so this is now held not by the essentialists, but by the nihilists. The nihilists, which I think there's the Charvakas, I think it's the Sanskrit term you see in some translations, the Charvakas. And so this is a view where they don't accept the existence of previous and future lives, previous and future births. And they also don't accept that happiness or pleasure arises from virtue, and that suffering and unpleasant feelings arise from non-virtue. So they don't accept karma, cause and effect of karma. And so that's, again, a deprecation. That's something which is a view that's deprecating the cause and effect of karma. And so for them, their view, so why is this important to discuss? Because their view does negate the intrinsic existence or the establishment of things within nature, of these things within nature, but it's not done in the same way that the Madhyamikas do it. So when the Madhyamikas refute these phenomena, like cause and effecting karma and past and future lives, when Madhyamikas refute that they exist by way of in nature, they're saying that they do still exist conventionally, whereas for these nihilists, these Charvakas, they completely refute their existence, not just by way of in nature, but even conventionally. So Madhyamikas, they have this qualification. They do not exist by way of in nature. They do not exist from their own side. And so the nihilists here, they're not using the reasoning of being a dependent arising or being dependently related. So for Madhyamikas, when they assert their lack of existence by way of in nature, they're doing it with a reason that these phenomena are dependently arisen, that they are contingent and dependently related. So what is it that the nihilists give us their reason? We just didn't see. We don't see the karma coming and affecting this life. We don't see it, so it doesn't happen. It's not there. Can't see it. So that's really the reason that they're giving. So it's really a completely different view. The reasons behind their rejection or negation of past and future lives and karma existing by way of a nature is completely different. When the way that they hold the view is different, because the Madhyamikas hold that view within accepting the conventional existence of them. So.
Ostan drin dileji zamshagini chiwachileyuna chiwachilemena da zamshagins.
Akinanga dambo loto ganla chikyomala yoa chikyomala sana chikdongi ribo signalo hati ni thomas damone ona. So now we'll pause the class going through the text, and if there's still some more questions, we can take those questions, or else we'll just stop the class.
Gela di tanda di di ta we ma da du sami zoba yu fatewa di hi di ta nga zu rangxing du ma du di kele che ma che del rali go ro di go chu ma chu
Jela, wadi.
So the ngobo mawa gi rangxing gi ngobo mawa gi gare
ngopu ma wa da ta tanda mu de jangbe da du gi da uma ba la ta kunzu gi kyo ma bu chli go ro kyo du sa ma le gi hi ji ro za wa root cost gare oh di root cost kunzu gi rangxing du ma du di ani go ma chwe da di chon kyo de le go ro
So then, just to kind of clarify and double check, so when we talk about these, either the essentialists or the nihilists, and all these different schools and views that the Madhyamikas are having these debates with, all the faults in their views, essentially, isn't it just coming down to that they're not differentiating clearly the difference between they're not able to understand what existing within nature or not existing within nature means, being established within nature and not being established within nature means.
다 된다 딜라 대시 된다 직내 배지 쉬에 가서는 된다 디 우마 자시에게 공물루기 쯧바 디렌 쯧바 치즈 다 투사디 또 뭐랑시 좀 맞추듯이 다 뒤쪽에 저사이들라 아니 제다마와도 도대 봐하시니 다 팀메가 줍다마 다 팀메를 맞지로 다 제다마와다 도대비 줍다기 다와디 값수 되는 공물루 지당 심자배장 오버랑시 주바 켈링고레 우마랑 랑규베 우마랑시 주바 켈링고레 이나 들달라 가바 마자와치 된다 조 응외마와 세 응외마와디 제다마와다 도대벨라 당가스는 공물루주기 우미 따와 수 체인데 심자배 따와 책인 그 파바 토메기 되니 심자배 따와 체규래 어디 인도자니 다 공물루주기 제수드니 신이 공물루주기 되니 우미 흉마 제베 제수드니 디 제라드니 신이 심심에 따와야 수치와 바보 토메기 소치와 등 아니 우마랑 규비 수치게 루벨린디지다 코나주 케바디 제라 페와르와 인도선 대달라더니 된다 깝기 뭐랑 시주바 켈링이 뭐뭐하듯이 저거 말. 다 제라마다 도대바디 템바 쉬우지 다르게 친구 쉬우 디어와체 이네 티제 바더니 가스나 우마 비티니 따주당 심심에 따주도서 쉬우지 냠니와 어디 유비 갈라되는 고물루주기더니 다 우마비 따주디 야수치 파바 도메기 셈셈이 따주디 야수치인데 다 우마 고물루주고 우마비 따와 수치에게 되니 땡지도 우마를 좀 세디로와 다디 우마 땡지도 좀 제인데 다 제다마다 되듯이 간제 잡도 될라더니 디 테바디 디리 미테바디 디레스는다 디 제인데 다 우버랑시 두바다 마주베디 땡니다 숭사디 어디 조디 아니 제라마다 도대비기 때문에 응워라시 마주바디 디 마이바 응워라시 주바 이미 군세 세는다 제라마다 도대비 개바 벤 사다 도다 쉬우지 달자 친구 유비까라 아니 응워라시 마주비 따와디 만냐면이다 디스체기 따와디 된 리비남랑 타이비고는 우마르 조축 리비고는 텔라파비로와 진짜 슝도 마 제니 아니 디 아니 가바치서디 조디 응워라시 주바 켈링에 제라마다 도대바 그와 다 넘바 산제바 남로기 다 따와 홍마 진술라 제거와디 다 오랑시 마주비 당 주바다 마주비 기타니 산점 디간데 되고리 다 지당 우마바 이디니 가바틴다 페나 우마랑 주바다 우마 탄주비 양 쯧바지요레 디 쯧바디 다 데바 주바다 마주와 마도지 랑시 주바다 마주와 디주보면 바치 다 지기 페나 심자바라 쯧연데 데바 주바 심심베 데바 주바다 우마비 데바 마주와 세기 디간지 다 우마랑 주바다 우마 탄주바스도 랑신 주바다 마주비 쯧바 어디 디 믹스간에 용연데 반에 다와 잡지수 중어지와 도체연데 다 된다 우마 자와 시라기 가바 제기 쪼디 다 응외마와라 아니 가바체 응외마와디 아니 년도 데마 데니스 티 제라마다 도데발라 봐 나한테 다 치료바이나 다 치료비다 템바 치료비다 템바 뭐부지기다 디여로 같은다 디 우마를 저 주기가수 동관이게 따와 텔라 바요에게 두고서 쪼디 우라시 마주비 동니게 따와디치 디 장시 주바 가사디 되는 제라마다 도디비 켈린디 아니 쪼가니 랑시 주바 켈린 거 왜뭐와서 딘데지 감이 수도
Just one kind of point to add on to that, what Karma said. So we have this text, the fundamental treatise of the fundamental wisdom of the middle way, fundamental treatise. And this text was written in a context, in the context where we're having these opponents as the essentialists. It's really referring mostly to the two Buddhist schools that were prevalent at the time, the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, the Great Exposition School and the Sutra Followers School. So those were the really, the views that were pervasive throughout India, that were the most widespread views of the time when Nagarjuna was alive. And so when Nagarjuna came, Protector Nagarjuna, he opened up the view of the Madhyamaka, or he was the trailblazer of the view of the Madhyamaka. And it's not that it didn't exist before. So both the Madhyamaka and the Chittamatra, which is the mind-only school, those views, they did exist, you know, they were taught by the Buddha, but they really were extremely they degenerated, you could say. I mean, maybe not the best word, but they lapsed, right? Their popularity lapsed over time, and so by the time the Nagarjuna came around, it was hardly existent. So he opened up this view. He was the trailblazer of this view. And how did he do that? By writing it's called the sixth collection of 6 texts on reasoning. Collection of the 6 texts on reasoning, which includes this fundamental treatise of wisdom. And so all of these texts that he wrote are in response to, or they're in dialogue with, the 2 other Buddhist schools that existed at the time, that were popular at the time, these Vaibhashika and Sautrantika. And so the Samsampa, the Chittamatra or mind-only school, that was what we can say opened up, or you say revived, it's another way to say it. It was revived or opened up later by a Sangha, but that was after Nagarjuna's time. So he wasn't giving debates to any of the Chittamatra because those texts hadn't been written yet. And so so that's when we talk about in the quotes that we have from Nagarjuna himself, where it talks about being established with a nature or not, is in relation to the way that these 2 other Buddhist schools, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, accept things existing within nature, within essence. And so, and that's, you know, again, they are essentialists, so they do accept that all phenomena exist by way of a nature, that they exist with essential natures. And so then, but then once these other schools came about, so there is now also, there is the Chittamatra, and then there was also further subdivisions within Madhyamaka that were sort of clarified by later scholars after Nagarjuna's time. So then you have different debates, like between the Prasangika Madhyamaka and the Svatantrika Madhyamaka. That's the middle way consequent school versus the middle way autonomy school. So then they have a unique way of debating about whether phenomena exist by way of, are established by way of a nature or not, because that's, you know, unique to those 2 sub-schools of Madhyamaka, the way that, so they have sort of a different way of debating about it. And then when the, after, and so that was what Chandrakirti, he then kind of made those debates against the, you know, clarified the difference between the meaning of being established with a nature or not in relation to the Sautrantika Madhyamaka. And then there's also debates with the Madhyamaka and the Chittamatra that came later, and those were in relation to whether or not things exist specific way that the Chittamatra accept that phenomena truly exist, that the Madhyamaka debated them, you know, debated against.
아니 디네 마치 쉬어도 단다디 우마리 저 주디 루루기 숨 차니 아니 단다가도 샘점마다 드줄라 각자 캡고야 딘데 요래
물론 어디디 무슨 얘기입니다.
각자 캡고 가고
예 각자 캡이야 it applies the 우마리 저 주 applies any opposition or opposition to Chittamatra, or they came after the thing, after Nagarjuna, right?
Younger the
루루기 우마 리조르 풍라 디 풍야 디 단다 셈자바다 주 말레곤 풍라 디 풍도 있다 디기 디나 각자 요도 야파게 가자 셈자바다 주 슈굴레 인자 콘졸라 각자 캬비아 딘데파 애플라이 쳇데 요레스
console like so like, right, okay, that's, yeah, so then this is the way that the object that's negated in the Nagarjuna's text, the collection of 6 texts on reasoning, does that also apply then when the later like Chittamatra text came about, and their when they talk about emptiness and their object of negation, does the same object of negation apply in the Chittamatra?
어디 된다디 반에 다와 잡고 우마 주비 값으로와 된다디 셈잠비기 되는 칼이 되바스는 치되 맞은 시바랑 신이 되바 주바레 세디 단디 지금 말했으니 반에 다와 잡고 치도니는 우마 주반다 된주 우마 주반다 디 까요레스 다 셈잠비기 다와디 다 바고는 가스나 야 파바 도메기 수치비 제라 셈잠비기 다와 치되 매진 시바 되바 주와 인스 치료든도 마줍스 시바 데마 주와 인식으로 다 지금도 스네야 반년 다와 잡아게 된데 가자디 우마 주비 값수 가요레스 나서
So there's the view by Chittamatra, the view held by Chittamatra that consciousness truly exists. So in the Chittamatra view, consciousness truly exists, but forms or objects of consciousness do not exist as external objects. That external objects are not established, but consciousness itself does truly exist. So Chandrakirti had negated, he did make proofs to negate the view that consciousness truly exists, which was held by the Chittamatra.
Thank you. 토치나.
나서 드린다 잠시하겠어.
Okay, so then we'll stop the class here. And apologies for my tardiness today. Just did not wake up in time.
오케이.
So
学别学就学面多这么谁说吧灵犀年的肩膀上界心的面的不忘因这个那么大心了去吧小也的蒙古的人半年大呀米刚这个这边国别新我们说偏当台湾马律中民接着希望电子家族因下边是的吧电主路及家电对接工作之类就都就特别龙头也罗些那么拉日了们对面的南电这边写了所办的长久深久人不马街把那解决起解话两把没把呀공내 공도 배워쇼 타진 내그 세베 면제부 사무 된제 타당 자위 파조 루주 yap세 공바다 지시 공도 주 요롱 개와디 개고 그 소놈의 이시 초도 소놈의 이시 레종베 담바구니 도바라쇼 thank you. Good night. All of you.
심전하고 토치나.
Thank you.
Okay.
Say.
Thank you.
Good night.